On the night of February 19, 2013, guests staying inside the aging Cecil Hotel had no idea they were about to become part of one of the internet's most haunting mysteries. Some complained about strange water pressure in their rooms. Others said the tap water looked dark. A few even mentioned an odd taste they could not explain. First, hotel staff treated the complaints like routine maintenance problems. Old hotels always had issues, especially this one. But above those guests, hidden on the rooftop inside one of the hotel's massive water tanks, something horrifying was waiting to be discovered. By then, a 21-year-old Canadian student named Elisa Lam had already vanished for weeks. No one knew where she went. No one understood what happened during her final hours. And then the elevator video appeared. The footage was grainy and silent, yet deeply unsettling. Elisa stepped in and out of the elevator repeatedly. She pressed multiple buttons in panic. She hit against the wall as if someone or something was standing outside the doors. At times, she appeared frightened. At others, almost childlike and confused. Her hands moved strangely through the air while the elevator doors refused to close. Millions of people would later watch that footage late at night, replaying it over and over, searching for clues hidden inside those eerie 4 minutes. Was she running from someone? Was she suffering a mental breakdown? Or was there something far darker happening inside the hotel's walls? The mystery spread across the internet like wildfire. YouTubers, detectives, paranormal investigators, and conspiracy theorists all became obsessed with the case. Some believed Elisa had uncovered something dangerous. Others claimed the hotel itself was cursed. But behind all the theories was a real young woman, a daughter, a student, a traveler exploring the world alone for the first time. And her story would end in a way so disturbing that even experienced investigators struggled to explain why it happened. This is the tragic and deeply unsettling mystery of Elisa Lam. Before anyone knew who she was, Elisa Lam was just a young woman trying to carve out her own path in life. Born in Vancouver, Canada, to immigrant parents who had worked tirelessly to create a stable environment for their family, Elisa grew up in a calm household with her sister. Like many kids from hardworking immigrant families, she faced certain expectations. Education was crucial. Responsibility was key. Success was the goal. To outsiders, her life seemed pretty typical. However, like many individuals, Elisa dealt with inner struggles that most people couldn't see. She was bright and reflective. Her friends described her as sweet, curious, and imaginative. She had a passion for books, music, fashion, and writing. On social media, particularly Tumblr, she opened up about her thoughts and feelings, sharing photos and personal reflections on life and loneliness. Her blog painted a picture of someone who was constantly examining herself and her surroundings. Elisa often wrote about her desire to grow stronger, to be understood, to break free from the weight of her own expectations. There was also a more private aspect of her life that not many knew about. Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, conditions that deeply impacted her. Some days, she felt full of energy and hope, while on others, she faced emotional struggles that drained her both mentally and physically. Navigating those feelings was an ongoing challenge. Despite these hurdles, Elisa was determined to keep pushing forward. She enrolled at the University of British Columbia, concentrating on her studies, although finding a balance was tough. At times, her mental health issues affected her academic life and everyday activities. Still, she kept striving to create a future for herself. In early 2013, Elisa decided to embark on a solo trip through the western United States. For her, this journey symbolized freedom, adventure, a brief break from her routine and the emotional pressures she faced. She planned to explore various cities along the West Coast, sharing her experiences online as she went. Although her parents were anxious about her traveling alone, Elisa reassured them frequently, calling home to let them know she was okay. Initially, the trip felt thrilling. She visited San Diego, posting upbeat updates online. She explored bookstores, tourist spots, and local neighborhoods. In her photos, she looked relaxed and happy, with no indication that something sinister was on the horizon. However, as she made her way north toward Los Angeles, subtle hints of instability may have started to surface. When Elisa checked into the notorious Cecil Hotel, she unknowingly stepped into a location with a long history of violence, tragedy, and death. And just days later, she would vanish without a trace. When Elisa Lam arrived in Los Angeles in January 2013, she likely believed she was checking into an affordable historic hotel in the middle of downtown. What she may not have fully understood was that the Cecil Hotel had already built a terrifying reputation long before she ever walked through its doors. The building opened in the 1920s, during a time when Los Angeles was experiencing rapid expansion. Back then, the design was meant to attract travelers and tourists seeking luxury in the growing city. Its marble lobby, grand staircases, and elegant design reflected ambition and wealth. But over the decades, the neighborhood around the hotel changed dramatically. The area surrounding the Cecil slowly became associated with poverty, addiction, violence, and homelessness. Located near the infamous Skid Row district, the hotel transformed from a glamorous destination into a place many residents of Los Angeles avoided entirely. Inside the hotel, disturbing incidents began piling up year after year. Deaths, suicides, drug overdoses, violent crimes. Some guests checked in and never walked back out. One of the most horrifying incidents occurred in the 1960s when a resident named Pauline Otten jumped from a hotel window, tragically landing on a pedestrian below and killing both of them instantly. In another case, a young woman known as Pigeon Goldie, a retired street performer who fed birds in a nearby park, was found murdered inside her room. The hotel's reputation grew darker with every passing decade. Even more disturbing was the fact that several serial killers reportedly stayed there over the years. Richard Ramirez, later known as the Night Stalker, allegedly lived at the hotel during the height of his killing spree in the 1980s. Witnesses claimed he would return late at night, covered in dirt and blood, before casually walking through the lobby unnoticed. Years later, another serial killer, Jack Unterweger, also reportedly stayed at the hotel while committing murders in Los Angeles. To many people, the Cecil became more than just a dangerous hotel. It became a symbol of despair, a place where vulnerable people drifted through temporary rooms while battling addiction, mental illness, loneliness, or poverty. Some stayed for a few nights. Others lived there for months. The line between hotel guest and permanent resident often became blurred. By 2013, parts of the building had been renovated and rebranded to attract younger travelers and tourists. Budget-conscious visitors, including international backpackers, were drawn in by low prices and downtown access. Yet, despite cosmetic improvements, the hotel's disturbing history still lingered beneath the surface, and some guests claimed they could feel it. Many later described the building as heavy, unsettling, and strangely claustrophobic. Long hallways stretched beneath dim lighting. Security cameras watched silent corridors. Certain floors housed long-term residents struggling with addiction and mental illness, while tourists stayed only a few rooms away. It was into this environment that Elisa stepped alone. At first, nothing appeared unusual. She checked in normally. She explored the city. She contacted her family. But soon, hotel staff and roommates would begin noticing behavior that suggested something was changing. Something that would eventually lead to one of the most chilling disappearances in modern true crime history. At first, Elisa Lam appeared to be just another traveler passing through the Cecil Hotel. She arrived alone, carrying luggage, personal belongings, and the excitement of a young woman exploring a new city. Like many travelers visiting downtown Los Angeles on a budget, she had chosen the hotel because it was inexpensive and centrally located. In the beginning, nothing seemed dramatically wrong. Elisa continued updating her Tumblr blog during the trip, posting photographs, fashion images, and personal thoughts. She visited bookstores and tourist areas around the city. To her parents back in Canada, she still sounded mostly normal during phone calls. But inside the hotel, subtle warning signs reportedly began appearing. Elisa had initially been assigned to a shared hostel-style room with other female travelers. According to reports, some of her roommates later complained about unusual behavior. They allegedly described Elisa as acting erratically at times, leaving strange notes, and behaving in ways that made the others uncomfortable. Eventually, hotel management moved her into a private room. That decision would later become one of the many details people analyzed endlessly online. What exactly had the roommates witnessed? Was Elisa already experiencing a serious mental health episode? Or was stress and exhaustion from traveling alone beginning to overwhelm her emotionally? No one could answer with certainty. As the days passed, Elisa's behavior appeared increasingly unpredictable, yet there were also moments where she seemed completely normal. That contradiction became one of the most tragic parts of the case. Mental illness does not always look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes a person can appear calm one moment and deeply distressed the next. Still, Elisa continued exploring the city. One of the last confirmed sightings of her before the elevator footage came from a nearby bookstore. Employees later remembered her as friendly and outgoing while shopping for gifts and books. Nothing about the interaction suggested someone was in immediate danger. That memory would haunt investigators later, because within hours Elisa would seemingly vanish from the face of the earth. Her parents became worried when their daily phone calls suddenly stopped. Elisa had promised to remain in contact throughout her trip, so the silence immediately alarmed them. At first, they hoped there was a simple explanation. Maybe her phone battery had died. Maybe she was traveling between locations. But the silence continued. Soon, her family contacted the Los Angeles Police Department and reported her missing. The search began quickly. Police officers searched inside the Cecil Hotel, including hallways, rooms, and common areas. Officers reportedly used dogs to inspect parts of the building, including the rooftop. But somehow, no trace of Elisa was found. It was as if she had simply disappeared. Then investigators discovered something that would transform the case forever. A surveillance recording from one of the hotel elevators. First, it seemed like an ordinary security video. But once detectives watched the footage closely, they realized they were looking at something deeply disturbing. Something that still unsettles millions of people to this day. As investigators from the Los Angeles Police Department continued searching for answers in the disappearance of Elisa Lam, they eventually uncovered a piece of evidence that would transform the case from a local missing person investigation into a worldwide obsession. The evidence came from a surveillance camera inside one of the elevators at the Cecil Hotel. The footage was recorded on January 31st, 2013, the same day Elisa was last seen alive. When police released the video to the public in hopes of generating new leads, they likely expected viewers to focus on identifying Elisa's movements or possible contacts inside the hotel. Instead, millions of people became disturbed by the behavior captured during those final recorded moments. The video begins quietly. Elisa enters the elevator alone, wearing a dark hoodie and carrying no visible signs of injury or distress. For a brief moment, everything appears ordinary. However, the atmosphere changes almost immediately after she steps inside. She begins pressing multiple elevator buttons rapidly, sometimes more than once, as though she is desperately attempting to make the elevator move. Her movements appear rushed and nervous rather than random. Instead of standing calmly and waiting for the doors to close, Elisa suddenly moves toward the back corner of the elevator and presses herself tightly against the wall. It looks less like someone hiding playfully and more like someone trying not to be seen. A few seconds later, she cautiously leans forward and peers into the hallway outside the elevator. She quickly pulls herself back inside before looking out again from a different angle. Her behavior suggests fear, confusion, or extreme anxiety, though no one else can be seen on camera. What made the footage even more unsettling was the elevator itself. Despite Elisa pressing numerous buttons, the doors refused to close for an unusually long period of time. To viewers watching the footage for the first time, it almost appears as though someone outside the camera's view is preventing the elevator from moving. This detail became one of the most heavily discussed aspects of the case and fueled countless theories across the internet. As the video rolls on, we see Elisa step out of the elevator and into the hallway, but then things take a turn for the bizarre. She starts moving her hands and arms in odd ways near the elevator doors, as if she's trying to talk to someone who's not there. Her gestures are erratic and her body language swings from agitation to confusion. Sometimes she looks genuinely scared, while at other times she appears almost disconnected from what's happening around her. The lack of sound in the footage makes it even more unsettling, leaving viewers to wonder what Elisa might have been hearing or seeing in those moments. After a few seconds, she walks away from the elevator and vanishes down the hallway. This becomes the last known footage of Elisa Lam before her disappearance. When the video hit the internet, it sparked a massive wave of speculation worldwide. YouTube channels began dissecting it frame by frame, and online forums filled up with theories trying to make sense of her strange behavior. Some paranormal enthusiasts claimed the hotel was haunted, while others thought she might be running from an unseen threat just out of view. There were even those who believed the footage had been tampered with by authorities to hide something. Observers pointed out that some parts of the video seemed slowed down and that the timestamp looked altered or blurred, adding more fuel to the fire of public suspicion and deepening the mystery. Meanwhile, mental health experts and investigators proposed a more tragic explanation. Professionals familiar with bipolar disorder suggested that Elisa could have been going through a severe psychological episode during that time. In extreme cases of untreated or unstable bipolar disorder, individuals might experience paranoia, hallucinations, and intense fear, which can feel very real to them. Someone in that state might think they are being followed or threatened, even when there's no actual danger. For many, this perspective made the footage even more heartbreaking. Instead of witnessing something supernatural, viewers felt they were observing a young woman silently struggling with her reality, all while alone in a hotel that had its own dark history. Despite the explanations offered, the elevator footage has continued to haunt the internet for years. Even now, when people watch Elisa anxiously standing in that elevator, glancing nervously down the empty hallway as if sensing something ominous, the video still evokes the same chilling emotions that first drew in millions of viewers around the globe. Perhaps that's what makes this footage so memorable. It doesn't come across as staged. It feels disturbingly authentic. As the days passed after Elisa Lam disappeared, the atmosphere inside the Cecil Hotel became increasingly unsettling. Her family had already traveled from Canada to assist in the search, desperately hoping that someone had seen her or that she would suddenly reappear alive and safe. Investigators continued reviewing surveillance footage and searching for leads, but every new clue only deepened the mystery surrounding her final hours. Meanwhile, guests staying inside the hotel began reporting disturbing problems that initially seemed unrelated to Elisa's disappearance. Several people complained that the water pressure in their rooms had become unusually weak. Others said the water coming from the taps looked dark or tasted strange. Some guests even described the water as having a foul odor that made them uncomfortable. First, hotel employees believed the issue was simply another maintenance problem in an aging building. The Cecil had a long history of neglect and structural issues, so unusual plumbing complaints were not entirely unexpected. However, as the complaints continued growing, staff members finally decided to inspect the hotel's rooftop water tanks. What they discovered there would shock the world. On the morning of February 19, 2013, a hotel maintenance worker climbed to the roof to investigate the water system. The rooftop itself already felt isolated and eerie, surrounded by concrete walls, industrial equipment, and large cylindrical water tanks that supplied water to the hotel below. As the worker approached one of the tanks and looked inside, he made a horrifying discovery. Elisa Lam's body was floating in the water. The realization was almost impossible to comprehend. For weeks, guests had unknowingly used water from the same tank where her body had remained hidden. People had showered, brushed their teeth, and drank contaminated water without understanding why the hotel's plumbing suddenly seemed abnormal. News of the discovery spread rapidly across the media, and public reaction was immediate and intense. Many people were horrified not only by the condition in which Elisa was found, but also by the bizarre circumstances surrounding the rooftop itself. Questions exploded everywhere. How had Elisa reached the roof unnoticed? How had she managed to enter the water tank? And perhaps most disturbingly, how had investigators searched the hotel earlier without finding her? The rooftop area was not easily accessible to ordinary guests. Reports indicated that alarms and locked access points were supposed to restrict unauthorized entry. The water tanks themselves were elevated and difficult to reach without the use of ladders. To many observers, the situation seemed almost impossible. Conspiracy theories immediately intensified online. Some people believed someone must have placed Elisa inside the tank after her death. Others argued that the physical difficulty of accessing the tank suggested that foul play was involved. Paranormal theories also returned stronger than ever, fueled by the already infamous reputation of the Cecil Hotel. But investigators continued focusing on evidence rather than speculation. During the autopsy, officials found no clear signs of physical assault or major traumatic injuries. Toxicology reports reportedly showed no presence of illegal drugs or alcohol that could fully explain her behavior. However, investigators also discovered evidence suggesting Elisa may not have been consistently taking all of her prescribed medication for bipolar disorder. That detail would become critically important. Medical experts later explained that severe bipolar episodes can involve paranoia, disorientation, impulsive behavior, and hallucinations, particularly when medication routines are interrupted. In extreme cases, individuals may lose their sense of reality entirely while still appearing partially functional to others around them. Authorities eventually concluded that Elisa's death was most likely an accidental drowning connected to a mental health crisis. According to the official explanation, she may have reached the rooftop during a state of confusion or paranoia, entered the water tank herself, and then became trapped inside with no realistic way to escape. Yet even after the case was officially closed, millions of people around the world remained unconvinced. Because the deeper people looked into Elisa Lam's final days, the more unsettling the mystery seemed to become. And for many, one question still lingered above all others. What truly happened during Elisa Lam's final moments alone on that rooftop? When the authorities finally confirmed that the body discovered in the rooftop water tank belonged to Elisa Lam, the situation had already spiraled way beyond a typical missing person case. What started as a heartbreaking disappearance at the Cecil Hotel turned into one of the internet's most captivating mysteries, pulling in countless people who got lost in a web of theories, speculation, fear, and deep emotional intrigue. The elevator footage became the focal point of this obsession. People from all over the globe watched that video over and over again, slowing it down frame by frame to catch any hidden clues that investigators might have overlooked. Some viewers fixated on Elisa's body language, believing she was reacting to someone just out of sight of the camera. Others scrutinized the elevator buttons, trying to figure out if she had pressed a secret sequence or was trying to flee from someone who might have been chasing her through the hotel. The internet transformed that footage into a massive puzzle. On platforms like Reddit, YouTube, and various true crime discussion boards, countless amateur sleuths began crafting their own theories about Elisa's last moments. Every little move she made in the elevator sparked intense debate. Some claimed her hand movements looked like secret signals or attempts to communicate with someone off camera. Others suggested that her actions indicated she was evading a real threat that the investigators had missed. As the mystery lingered without resolution, the theories got even wilder. One of the most talked about ideas focused on the hotel itself. Given Cecil's already chilling history tied to violence, suicides, and serial killers, many online users started to believe the building was cursed or haunted. Paranormal enthusiasts posted videos asserting that Elisa had encountered supernatural forces in the hotel's hallways. Some even claimed that unseen spirits, visible only in slowed-down footage, were interacting with her during that elevator scene. These ghostly theories gained traction because the case had all the makings of a horror tale. A young woman alone in a notorious hotel, strange surveillance footage, bad behavior, and a body found in a bizarre location weeks later. But the internet didn't just stop at ghost stories. Some people came up with elaborate conspiracy theories that included government experiments, secret societies, or intentional cover-ups by officials. One theory linked Elisa's death to a tuberculosis test happening in the area at the time, simply because the test had a name that sounded similar to her last name. Although that connection was purely coincidental and quickly disproven, the theory continued to circulate online for years.